The impossible rest. The planet Kethera Prime screamed with violence. Plasma bolts streaked across blood-red skies, while the ground trembled under the weight of massive war machines. This forsaken world had become the epicenter of the most brutal conflict the Outer Rim had witnessed in 3 centuries. 2 mighty alien empires, the crystalline Zilix Empire and the insectoid Thrakari Collective, had turned this once peaceful mining world into a hellscape of destruction. Mountains had been carved into twisted metal graveyards. Rivers ran thick with the toxic runoff from countless battles. The very air shimmered with energy discharges and poisonous gases that could kill most species within minutes. Even the hardiest alien warriors required full environmental suits and constant medical monitoring just to survive on the surface. Yet somewhere in this nightmare, Captain Elena Voss slept peacefully. The human military consultant had arrived 3 days ago aboard a small diplomatic vessel sent by the Terran Federation to assess the situation and potentially mediate between the warring factions. What she found was a conflict so intense that both sides had forgotten why they were fighting. They simply continued because stopping meant showing weakness. The Lena had made camp in what the aliens called the Death Valley, a stretch of scorched earth between the 2 main battle lines where the fighting was heaviest. Artillery shells whistled overhead every few minutes. Laser cannons carved molten trenches in the rocky soil. The constant percussion of explosions created a rhythm that never ceased. To the Zelix observers watching from their crystal spires, the humans' behavior was incomprehensible. Commander Xilex, his crystalline form refracting the light of distant explosions, studied the sleeping figure through his tactical scope. His voice carried a musical chime as he spoke to his aide. "The human female has been unconscious for 7 standard hours," he reported, his confusion evident even through the alien speech patterns. "The sound levels in that sector exceed safe thresholds by a factor of 12. The electromagnetic interference alone should have disrupted her neural pathways." His aide, a younger Zelix named Flex, flickered with nervous energy. "Perhaps she is deceased, Commander. Many species cannot survive such conditions." "No," Tylux replied, consulting his bioscanners. "Her vital signs remain steady. Heart rate, brain activity, cellular regeneration, all within normal parameters. If anything, she appears to be in deeper rest than our own soldiers achieve in shielded chambers." On the opposite side of the battlefield, the Thrakari forces were equally baffled. General Thakor, his chitinous carapace scarred by countless battles, clicked his mandibles in agitation as he received reports from his scouts. "The human ignores our artillery barrages," one scout reported, its compound eyes glittering with uncertainty. "Our pheromone weapons have no effect. Even our sonic disruptors, designed to shatter enemy morale, seem to enhance her rest rather than disturb it." Thakor's 6 arms gestured in a pattern indicating deep thought. In his 70 years of warfare, he had never encountered such a phenomenon. His species had evolved on a world where constant vigilance meant survival. The idea of sleeping through combat was not just foreign, it was impossible to comprehend. "Perhaps this is some form of human battle meditation," suggested another Thrakari officer. "Intelligence reports indicate their species engages in unusual psychological warfare techniques." But Elena was not meditating or employing any special technique. She was simply sleeping, just as she had learned to do during her childhood on the colony world of Titan's Edge. Titan's Edge had been humanity's attempt to establish a foothold in the most inhospitable region of known space. The planet experienced constant seismic activity, with volcanic eruptions occurring daily. Acid rain fell for months at a time. Native predators hunted in packs, their howls echoing through the night. The colonists lived in underground shelters, emerging only when necessary to maintain their equipment or gather resources. Elena had been born during the settlement's 5th year, when conditions were at their worst. Her first memories were of sleeping through earthquakes that shook the colony's foundations. Her lullabies had been the distant roar of volcanic activity and the scratching of acid rain against reinforced windows. What others considered catastrophic noise, she had learned to find comforting. When she was 12, a massive storm system had engulfed the colony for 3 weeks. The howling winds exceeded anything in the weather records. Most colonists huddled in fear, unable to rest as their shelters groaned under the assault. Alina had slept through all of it, waking only when her mother gently shook her to announce the storm had passed. That was when the adults realized something special about their children. The second generation of Titan's Edge colonists had adapted in ways no one expected. They didn't just survive the harsh conditions, they thrived in them. They found peace in chaos, strength in adversity, and rest in circumstances that would drive other species to madness. Now, as plasma bolts illuminated the night sky above Kethera Prime, Alina's body was doing what it had been trained to do since birth. Her breathing remained steady despite the thin, toxic atmosphere. Her muscles relaxed even as the ground shook from nearby explosions. Her mind processed the sounds of battle not as threats, but as a familiar symphony of survival. Around her, scattered pieces of alien war machinery told the story of the conflict. A Zelix crystal cannon lay half-buried in the rubble, its focusing chambers cracked and dark. Thrakeri bioweapons, resembling giant insects with metallic augmentations, had been torn apart by energy blasts. The debris field stretched for kilometers in every direction, a monument to the futility of the war. Yet Alina had chosen this exact spot for her camp. To the aliens watching, it seemed like madness or some form of death wish. They could not understand that for a human from a death world, sleeping surrounded by danger was not just possible, it was preferable. The chaos kept potential threats at bay. The noise masked her presence from predators. The destruction provided cover and resources. As the night wore on, both alien forces found themselves drawn to observe the impossible sight. Warriors who had been fighting each other for months began to question their understanding of courage, endurance, and survival. Some began to whisper that perhaps the humans were not the primitive species they had assumed. Alina's sleep was not the unconscious vulnerability that other species experienced. It was an active form of recovery, a time when her body repaired damage and her mind processed information. Even unconscious, she remained aware of her surroundings. Her hand rested casually on the grip of her plasma rifle, ready to respond to any genuine threat in milliseconds. This was the reality of humanity that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humans were not the strongest species, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced, but they possessed something that no other known species had developed: the ability to find peace in the heart of chaos, to rest in the presence of danger, and to treat the impossible as merely another challenge to overcome. As dawn approached, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of orange and red, Alina began to stir. Her internal chronometer, calibrated to Terran Standard Time, indicated she had achieved a full 8 hours of restorative sleep. Around her, the battle continued with the same intensity as when she had laid down, but she felt refreshed and ready to face whatever the day might bring. The aliens watching from their respective positions braced themselves for whatever came next. They had witnessed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of biology, psychology, and warfare. The human had not just survived a night in hell, she had rested peacefully through it. What they were about to discover was that for Alina Voss, sleeping through a war zone was just the beginning of what humanity could accomplish when pushed to their limits. The real demonstration of human capability was about to begin, and it would change everything both sides thought they knew about the species that had recently emerged from the Sol system to take their place among the stars. The war for Kethera Prime was about to take a very different turn, all because one human had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply refusing to be afraid. Dawn of understanding. Alina opened her eyes as the first rays of Kethera Prime's binary suns pierced through the toxic cloud cover. The morning light filtered through the smoke and debris, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Around her, the symphony of war continued unabated. Plasma cannons discharged in rhythmic patterns, energy shields crackled under assault, and the distant rumble of advancing war machines created a bass note that vibrated through the ground. She sat up slowly, stretching muscles that had recovered completely during her peaceful rest. Her joints moved fluidly despite the planet's harsh gravity, which was nearly twice that of Earth standard. The toxic atmosphere that required full environmental suits for other species was processed easily by her enhanced lungs, an adaptation inherited from generations of humans who had learned to breathe on worlds where the air itself was poison. Alina's morning routine began with a systematic equipment check. Her plasma rifle showed full charge despite the electromagnetic interference that plagued the region. Her communications array had automatically filtered and recorded overnight transmissions from both alien factions, threats, demands for surrender, tactical updates, and increasingly confused reports about the human who had somehow survived another night in the death zone. She activated her portable field kitchen, a compact device that could extract nutrients from almost any organic matter. Within minutes, she was brewing coffee from beans she had brought from Titan's Edge, a bitter, strong blend that could wake the dead. The familiar aroma mixed strangely with the acrid smell of burnt metal and ozone that permeated the battlefield. As Alina sipped her coffee, she reviewed the tactical situation on her display screen. The war had reached a stalemate that was bleeding both empires dry. The Zelix forces, with their crystal-based technology and energy manipulation abilities, controlled the northern sector. The Thrakeri Collective, masters of biotechnology and swarm tactics, dominated the south. Between them lay this contested wasteland where neither side could gain lasting advantage. What fascinated Alina was how predictable both sides had become. The Zelix attacked with mathematical precision at dawn, noon, and dusk. The Thrakeri responded with swarm assaults that followed pheromone-driven patterns as rigid as any computer program. Each species was fighting according to their evolutionary programming, unable to adapt or think beyond their genetic limitations. Humans, Alina reflected, had a different approach to warfare. They adapted. Her contemplation was interrupted by movement in the nearby rubble. A figure emerged from what appeared to be empty wreckage. A Zelix scout, its crystalline form shimmering with camouflage fields that would have been invisible to most species. But Alina's enhanced vision, trained on a world where predators used every form of concealment imaginable, had detected the subtle distortion. The scout approached cautiously, its weapon lowered but ready. Alina could hear the harmonic frequencies of Zelix speech through her universal translator, though the actual communication seemed to involve complex light patterns within the being's crystal structure. "Human Alina Voss," the scout chimed. "I am Observer Zefix of the Ninth Resonance. My commanders wish to understand your survival mechanism, how you maintain consciousness suspension in a high-threat environment." Yelena smiled, setting down her coffee cup. "I sleep, same as everyone else, I imagine." "Impossible," Zefix replied, his form flickering with agitation. "Our analysis indicates that your neural patterns during rest state achieve deeper recovery cycles than our warriors manage in sealed meditation chambers. The acoustic interference alone should prevent meaningful rest." "Sound doesn't bother me," Alina explained simply. "I grew up on Titan's Edge. Volcanoes, earthquakes, acid storms, those were my lullabies. This," she gestured at the ongoing battle around them, "is actually pretty quiet by comparison." The concept seemed to short-circuit something in Zefix's understanding. His crystalline structure pulsed through several color spectrums before stabilizing. "Your species evolved on a world that required adaptation to constant threat stimuli." "Not evolved exactly," Alina corrected. "Adapted. Humans are good at that. We make do with what we have." As if summoned by their conversation, a new presence made itself known. The ground vibrated with a different rhythm, and Alina turned to see a Thrakeri warrior approaching from the opposite direction. Unlike the Zelix scout's elegant approach, this creature moved with the controlled aggression of an apex predator. General Thakor himself had come to investigate. His massive form, standing nearly 3 meters tall, was covered in battle scars that told the story of decades of warfare. 6 arms, each equipped with different bioweapons, moved in coordinated patterns that would have hypnotized prey species. His compound eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that had intimidated countless enemies. Human, he clicked in the harsh tones of Thrakari speech. I am General Thakor, commander of the 7th Swarm. You have survived 72 hours in the death zone. Explain this impossibility. Elena looked up at the imposing figure and shrugged. I needed somewhere quiet to sleep. This seemed like the best spot. The general's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or disbelief. Quiet. The acoustic signature of this location exceeds combat tolerance for all known species. Our psychological warfare specialists use similar sound patterns to drive enemies to madness. Your psychological warfare needs work, Elena commented, taking another sip of coffee. Though I appreciate that you kept the really heavy artillery fire to the south last night, much more considerate than the Zelix with their dawn bombardments. Both aliens stared at her in amazement. Zephix's crystal structure was cycling through colors that indicated deep confusion, while Thakor's breathing spiracles fluttered in a pattern his species associated with encountering something beyond their understanding. You monitored our tactical operations while unconscious, Thakor demanded. I'm a light sleeper, Elena admitted. Occupational hazard of growing up where everything wants to kill you. But I've got to ask, what exactly are you two fighting about? Because from where I sit, you're both destroying a perfectly good planet over what seems like a territorial dispute that could be resolved with a simple negotiation. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Both aliens began speaking at once, their voices overlapping as they recited grievances, historical claims, and strategic necessities. Elena listened patiently for several minutes before holding up a hand. Stop, she said quietly, but with an authority that somehow cut through both aliens' conditioning. You're both reciting talking points. I asked what you're fighting about, not what your governments told you to say. The sudden silence was profound. For the first time since the conflict began, two beings from opposite sides of the war found themselves in the same space without immediately trying to kill each other, forced to confront a question neither had asked themselves in months. Zephix was the first to speak, his harmonic voice subdued. Though the mining rights were the initial dispute, this world contains unique crystal formations that our technology requires, and we need the biological compounds from the native ecosystem, Thakor added reluctantly. The war began as a jurisdictional disagreement over resources that you're both destroying with this war, Elena pointed out. At this rate, there won't be any crystals or biological compounds left to fight over. The truth of that statement hit both aliens like a physical blow. They had been so focused on denying each other access to the planet's resources that they had lost sight of the fact that their war was destroying those very resources. Elena stood up, finishing her coffee. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to go back to your commanders and tell them that a human mediator is offering to resolve this dispute. The terms are simple: shared access to resources, joint mining operations, and an end to this waste of lives and materials. Impossible, Thakor growled. The collective does not negotiate with crystal pushers. Equally impossible, Zephix chimed. The Empire cannot trust biomanipulators. Elena nodded as if she had expected this response. That's fine. You don't have to trust each other. You just have to trust me. Why would we trust a single human? Both aliens asked almost simultaneously. Elena's smile was patient but carried an edge that neither alien had noticed before. Because I'm the one who's been sleeping peacefully in your war zone for 3 days. Because I survived the night in conditions that would kill your best warriors. Because I represent a species that turns death worlds into gardens and makes homes in places where others see only death. She began packing her equipment with efficient movements. More importantly, because I'm not asking you to trust me out of kindness. I'm telling you that humanity has a vested interest in this conflict ending. The Terran Federation is prepared to offer both your species something more valuable than these resources. What could humanity possibly offer that would interest our empires? Zephix asked. Elena shouldered her pack and checked her weapon one final time. Survival techniques, adaptation methods, the knowledge of how to thrive in environments that would destroy you. We've been watching this war, and we've realized something that you haven't. She looked directly at each alien in turn. This isn't your first stalemate war, is it? Both your species have a pattern of getting locked into conflicts you can't win or lose. The Zelix Empire has 3 other active conflicts in similar states. The Thrakeri Collective has 2. You fight until you exhaust yourselves, then move on to new conflicts without resolving the old ones. The accuracy of her assessment was written in both aliens' reactions. Belina had touched on something that their military leaders preferred not to discuss, a fundamental flaw in how both species approached warfare. Humanity doesn't fight wars we can't end, Elena continued. When we encounter a problem we can't solve with force, we adapt. We find new approaches. We turn enemies into allies, obstacles into opportunities, and impossible situations into stepping stones. She began walking toward the neutral zone between the 2 armies, her casual stride unaffected by the ongoing artillery exchanges. The offer stands for 48 hours, joint mediation, resource sharing, and access to human survival techniques that could help both your species expand into regions of space you currently consider uninhabitable. And if we refuse, Fakor called after her. Elena paused and looked back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then you continue this war until you both collapse from exhaustion, and humanity negotiates salvage rights with whoever's left. Either way, we get what we need from this system. As she disappeared into the smoke and debris, both aliens found themselves facing a reality they had never considered. The human hadn't just survived their war zone. She had made it clear that humanity viewed their entire conflict as a manageable problem with predictable outcomes. For the first time in months, both Zephix and Thakor found themselves thinking beyond their immediate tactical objectives. They were beginning to understand that they weren't just facing a new mediator. They were confronting a species that approached warfare, diplomacy, and survival with methods their empires had never encountered. The war for Kythera Prime was about to end, not through victory or defeat, but through the intervention of a species that had learned to sleep peacefully in hell and wake up ready to make it a better place.